It's like being canonized. Buenos días. Me llamo Juan Esteves, a.k.a. Martin Sheen, and it's a pleasure to return from whence I came for such a special occasion. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm deeply moved. I'm not a very comfortable public speaker. In fact, I've never met anyone that was. Nobody really looks forward to this. I promise you. So, I learned a little prayer from a dear friend of mine some years ago that I always use before I start. And I haven't done it yet this morning, so if you don't mind, I'll do it in front of you. Lord, take me where you want me to go, show me who you want me to see, tell me what you want me to say, then Lord, get me out of your way. That was my friend, Father Michael Judge, if you remember the name. He was the first victim of 9/11. And I'm honored to remember him here this morning. You know, I got a call a few weeks ago from a dear friend of mine who read about this event and called to congratulate me. And he said, you know, if you get enough of those degrees, you become a thermometer. I've still got a ways to go, but I'm warming up. My dear father, Francisco, I'm sure is turning over in his grave just up the street here in Calvary Cemetery. As you heard earlier, he was determined that I should attend the University of Dayton. And I was equally determined to go to New York and begin a career in the theater. It became a great source of tension between us. And I thought maybe the best way I could convince him that I was not university material was to send him a message in no uncertain terms that I did not belong here. So I took the entrance examination and I failed it on purpose. In fact, I understand that to this day I still hold the record for the lowest degree in the history of this university's entrance examination. Out of a possible 100, I scored a 3. But now, looking back on it, I'm not so sure I would have done any better if I'd really tried. My father and I healed our rift, and he blessed me, and I went off to New York to begin a career. He was my first hero. He was the best man I ever knew, and I'm honored to remember him here this day with thanksgiving and praise. You know, I'm going through a bit of a identity crisis, so I hope you'll bear with me a little bit. It was mentioned earlier that I was part of a certain series that began in the fall of 1999 and went all the way to 2006. And as a result, I became known as the acting president of the United States. And when the series ended in 2006, I became known as the former acting president of the United States, and it still dogs me. My grandson and I started this journey earlier in the week. Our first stop was in Chicago, and as we boarded the plane in Los Angeles, I was greeted by another passenger with, "Good morning, Mr. President." Air Force One still in the shop. There was a couple seated in front of us that were very confused about my identity as well, and they argued all the way. About halfway to Chicago, we overheard the woman say to her companion, "No, no, no, he is not Emilio Estevez's brother. He is Charlie Sheen's son." We landed over in Chicago, and as we were going to the baggage area, 2 little girls, I guess they were about 8 or 10 years old, came rushing up all excited. One said, "Oh, sir, we love you so much. You're our favorite person in all the world. Please, 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 could we have an autograph?" "Of course," I said, and I signed for both of them. As they walked away, I heard one say to the other, "I can't make out his handwriting. Who did you say he was?" It's not easy being Sheen. Was it mentioned that I've been an actor all my life? In fact, I have no conscious memory of ever not being an actor, but as was mentioned, acting is what I do for a living, and activism is what I do to stay alive. Each time someone stands up for an ideal, or acts to improve the lot of others, or strikes out against injustice, they send forth a tiny ripple of hope, and crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, those ripples build a current which can sweep down the mightiest walls of prejudice and injustice. Those words were spoken at the University of Cape Town, South Africa in 1966 by Senator Robert F. Kennedy. They are inscribed on his memorial over at Arlington National Cemetery as well, and they have been a powerful source of inspiration for my generation ever since. The more the world changes, the more it remains the same, I believe, because the most important needs of every human being on earth are not only food, clothing, and shelter, but equally the need for justice, healing, and mercy. Without the latter, the former are useless. It is the gross inequality of food, clothing, and shelter that divides us, of course, but it is the absolute necessity for justice, healing, and mercy that really unites us. So whether we choose to acknowledge it or not, we are all responsible for each other and the world, which is exactly the way it is, because consciously or unconsciously, we have made it so. And while none of us made any of the rules that govern the universe, we do make all the rules that govern our own hearts and minds. And we are all beneficiaries of those endless number of strangers who have lived on this globe from every nation of the world for time immemorial. And they assure us that the world is still a wonderful and safe place despite our fear. And we're not asked to do great things, we're asked to do all things with greater care. And such an ideal is rare in a culture of so many compromised values and so much cynicism, a culture that all too often knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. And yet there remains a very real and mysterious yearning deep within each and every human heart that compels us to reach outside of ourselves and help others for our own sake. But this yearning is a manifestation, I believe, of our true selves and leads us to the very first small, conscious acts of personal heroism, which often brings rejection from the crowd, but satisfaction from the heart. This yearning, however, can be very, very costly. If it were not so, we would be left to question its value. But remember this above all. One heart with courage is a majority. Over the entire history of the human race, no one has ever made any real contribution without personal suffering, self-sacrifice, and sometimes even death. The Irish tell the story of a man who arrives at the gates of heaven and asks to be let in. St. Peter says, of course, just show us your scars. The man says, I have no scars. St. Peter says, what a pity. Was there nothing worth fighting for? My fondest wish for each and every one of us is that we will find something in our lives worth fighting for, because when we do, we will have found a way to unite the will of the Spirit with the work of the flesh, and the world will discover fire for the second time. Then may the light and the heat from that fire confirm our purpose with every thought, every word, every action to help heal a broken world wherever we may find it, so that in the end we may be made worthy of the long-promised blessing reserved for the peacemakers and those that do justice. And we can lift up people everywhere to that place where the heart is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depths of truth and tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sands of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action into that heaven of freedom, dear Father. Let us all awake. Thank you so much.